So, I guess I always start every video the same, huh? I don't like channels where it seems like people just pump out content just to pump out content, to keep up with the algorithm, whatever that might mean. So that's a trouble I'm having. I wanna talk about stuff, but I only feel it's worth making a video if I feel like it's worth talking about. And I don't know that I want to just repeat the same things over and over again. I mean, eventually I'll end up repeating stuff, but today I wanted to address a point that seems to get made a lot by everybody at the Daily Wire and most other, like PragerU, this Dennis Prager character, who is probably the main culprit here, who's really just a disgusting person. I align with him politically on mostly everything, but not a good person. And that is the issue of veganism. So I've been a vegan for about 3 years now. My daughter is vegan, my dog's vegan, my wife is vegan. We just have a no animal products household. I don't use leather. We don't consume or use any products that have animal parts in them. And one of the, because I said from the beginning, I will not get this COVID vaccine no matter what, simply because it was mandated and because the state I'm in, Colorado, allows for philosophical exemptions. I was able to get a philosophical exemption from my previous company on that basis, where I have a philosophical objection because these vaccines were tested on animals. And that was more useful than seemingly the religious exemptions that nobody was able to get. So that definitely worked in my favor. But yeah, so I think it's been like 2 months since the last video, but I just wanted to post about this because I hear about it all the time, especially because all of our commentators that I assume we all listen to are sponsored by that company Good Ranchers. And it's really just, it makes me sick every time I hear it. Especially when people are talking about outlawing abortion and how wrong abortion is and 60 million babies. And then it's like, oh yeah, and in order to be a man, you have to get this steak also. It's really, really sickening. Now, as atheists, of course, we don't believe inherently that humans are different. I suppose at a foundational level, we are just humans. And humans are just animals. We have chosen some arbitrary metrics. Now, the metrics we've chosen are significant, that being understanding things through a conceptual lens and being self-aware, things like that. Those are ultimately arbitrary characteristics that we've chosen to say, because we can do this, we are different than other animals. And that is the Christian, Muslim position. Any religion, especially the big three, will make the distinction between humans and animals on that basis. And it's really arbitrary evolutionarily. You know, lions evolved to run faster, jump higher, have more powerful bites, because that's how they were able to survive in their environment. So either they evolved those characteristics or they died. And it was the same thing with humans. We were apes that weren't no longer in the trees. So we had to evolve somehow to survive. So either we survive by evolving some set of attributes that allow us to survive, or we don't. So by definition, if we're alive now, we must have evolved attributes that help us thrive in our environment. We don't have big claws, we don't have big teeth, we do have our brains. So we're distinct from other animals in that capacity, just like giraffes are distinct from other animals in the long neck department. It's ultimately arbitrary, but obviously we're biased towards our own species, and that's understandable. I mean, I am as well. If there's a dog in the house that's burning down, and there's a dog in there and there's my daughter in there, I'm gonna get my daughter. If there's a dog and there's somebody else's daughter, I'm gonna get the daughter of whoever it is. Doesn't matter to me. It's a human child. I don't think there's anything inconsistent about being biased towards, your own species, ultimately that supports the evolutionary process. You have to be biased towards your own species because being biased in favor of another species is a pretty good way of getting yourself killed and killing off your population. But anyway, establishing that humans are just animals and we're different in some critical, very important ways. We're able to dominate our environment, which is significant, obviously. But the bottom line with veganism is you always hear from, like, Steve Ranella is all the points that I'm going to try to hit on are points that he thought he made in succession in an interview that I saw, and they're all just absurd. The first one is, you never see a tiger sitting up on a hill looking at whatever the prey animals are and saying, oh, it would be unethical to eat them. Well, they have not developed the capacity to maliciously kill other animals. It's just a purely survival instinct. They don't have the same brain as us, just the way that we don't have the same claws as them. So there is no malicious intent or doing it out of laziness or convenience. It's simply they don't have the capacity to do otherwise. And them being felines, I'm pretty sure this is true. I've heard it a million times. I'm not entirely sure, but felines can't survive without eating other animals. That's fine. That's an amoral process for them because they don't have a sense of morality, with the exception of maybe, they're friendly towards a person who they haven't seen in 7 years, but who raised them from a cub, that type of thing. But if there is any sense of morality with animals like that, it's very rudimentary. It's not like ours. But given that we do have a sense of morality, what it comes down to is every time you sit down to eat, you have the option to either contribute or to not contribute to the needless torture, slaughter, commiseration of billions of animals every week. You have the option to do that. And with that framework, your justification for why veganism is dumb or why it doesn't work, blah, 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 it must hold up within that framework, because that's really what it comes down to. We are at a point in the life cycle of our species where we can easily, especially those of us in the United States, survive without eating or consuming or using any animal products. I've been doing it for 3 years. I'm in great shape. Never had any issues with PT tests or anything like that. Of course it sounds pompous, but I look like I'm in good shape also. Like I suffered absolutely no negative health effects. I actually literally didn't notice a difference at all. I thought maybe I'd feel healthier once I went vegan, but there was just no difference. There isn't any difference. And here in Colorado, we have vegan fast food restaurants. We have Vegan Van in Denver. If anybody's ever in Denver, Vegan Van. This is literally the best food I've ever had, regardless of vegan or not. The Crunch Wrap at Vegan Van is absolutely nuts. But that's what it ultimately comes down to. You have the option to either contribute or choose to not contribute to what's taking place in factory farms. Doesn't matter, grass-fed, small local farm where they're nice to the cow before they bleed it while it's still living, and they're really sweet to the lamb before they cut its throat without shocking it or anything like that. And that's the case with halal meat. There is legislation in place that says you have to stun the animal, blah, 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 blah. It's not followed anyway, but there is a religious exception there. So you can, out in the open, torture and slaughter any animal you want, and I believe it's done almost exclusively with lambs. If you claim that you're a Muslim and it's halal meat, you can do whatever you want to the animal, and they can't touch you. Pretty sickening. But that's the main point, and that's the framework of this whole situation. Can you survive, and can you live the exact same lifestyle without contributing to this or not? The answer is yes, you can. If you're born in the United States, if you live in the United States, the vast majority of Western countries, you can. So at that point, given the moral implications of what eating and using animal products are, there's a justification that needs to be made, and I've never heard a reasonable one. One that the Daily Wire people especially use is this idea of, you got to go to Whole Foods and all that. You don't have to do that. You just go to Publix or King Soopers, whatever. It'll take about a week of you getting used to what you can and can't get, and you're good to go. Me going to King Soopers once a week to get my family groceries is not any different than it was before. There's just certain things I don't buy. But there's that idea that you have to be a privileged, rich white person in order to afford this food. Okay, A, bullshit. That's not even close to true. I don't even feel the need to dive any deeper on that. B, why are you looking at an issue through a Marxist framework? Like that is what you're doing. And you're not playing by the rules of modern conservatism, which is if you want to be successful, you play by your own rules. You don't accept the left's framework when it's convenient for you. And that's what you're doing. You say, well, most, these people can't do this because they don't have the means. They're not privileged enough to be able to do that. A, bullshit. B, there should never be a time where you're using that framework. And C, that doesn't justify the practice anyway. Convenience for you is not worth the life of anybody. You would inconvenience yourself to save a human. There's no reason to suspect that we should feel differently about other species. I think that being a vegetarian, I met a lot of people that, I'm not a vegan, but I'm a vegetarian. Well, I'll let you look it up for yourself, and I implore you to do so. With all these things, but in particular the dairy industry. The dairy industry might be worse than the meat industry. If you look at so just chickens, for example, right? So where you're collecting eggs on a mass scale, a factory farm, they have to breed the chickens, obviously, so that they can have more. What happens to the male chickens at the egg factory where they're harvesting eggs? They just get thrown while they're alive in a blender. That's what happens to them. As soon as they realize they're male, toss them in the blender. It's really disgusting. There's footage online that you can find if you want. But then it's the same thing in the dairy industry. Maybe you're not bleeding the cow dry, but what you are doing is forcing the cow to be pregnant for its entire lifetime, immediately taking all of its babies away so that you can milk it. I mean, there is no real ethical distinction between the meat industry and the dairy industry. So I look at this as analogous to the people who say that they're spiritual. You've undoubtedly met these people, especially if you're an atheist, where they say, they basically say, well, I'm not a Christian, but I'm spiritual. Or, I don't subscribe to a religion, but I believe that there's a higher power. This is directly analogous to saying, I don't believe in the workshop and the elves and the flying reindeer, but I do believe in Santa Claus. It's like the foundation of the belief system is what you accept, and the things that are by definition more likely to be true, you reject. That's you're just in that hermetically sealed environment where you got the word from mommy and daddy's lap, and you don't want them to be wrong. So I accept God. But I don't accept all this other stuff. Well, all the other stuff is by definition more likely to be true than God. And that it's the same thing for vegetarians. Of course, maybe it's out of ignorance on their part, where in reality, I'll take that incremental step. I'll take you getting halfway there. That's better than you just saying, I don't give a fuck what I'm eating. But if you're a vegetarian, you have to realize you're still contributing to this. So you shouldn't feel like you have the moral high ground if you're still eating dairy and drinking milk and whatnot. The primary problem is, what does a vegan look like? Well, a vegan looks like a smelly hippie with dreadlocks with the tie-dye shirt whose parents were protesting Vietnam, of course. It is absolutely insufferable, and I will tell you, honestly, I absolutely hate on a mortal level most of my fellow vegans. It is really disgusting. But the really critical reason for that is that the positions that we have sort of on the political ledger are immediately relegated to one group of people. So if you're a vegan, there's a 99% chance you didn't vote for Trump. I'm the 1%, but if you're a socialist, there's a 99% chance that you are in favor of most democratic policies. And the really unfortunate one that seems to be taking place now is if you are a Democrat, you're in favor of all this sexual exploitation of children that's going on. But that's really unfortunate. It doesn't have to be the case. It need not be the case. There's nothing intellectually incoherent or inconsistent about being a conservative and being a vegan. And one of the things that I hear most often is people are surprised because I'm a veteran that I'm a vegan, and because I think people associate being a veteran with, being tough and being manly and eating steaks and drinking beers, because that's been, socially ingrained, mostly by the meat industry, big beef or whatever you want to call it. But there's nothing inconsistent there at all. In fact, I think it's inconsistent to eat meat and also be a veteran. Because from my position, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and obey my president so long as it's a lawful order. Obviously, I wouldn't be obeying any orders right now were I still in. But the ultimate purpose of the oath that you swear is to defend people who can't defend themselves, or defend people who can't defend themselves as well as you can defend them. I mean, that's ultimately what it boils down to. And there's I don't feel any difference between defending a defenseless child and defending a defenseless dog who's being strangled out in public, or defending a defenseless lamb who's being poked and prodded and cut open by some Muslim because it's a tradition. And there is no difference there with pigs or cows either. Pigs are actually smarter than dogs. Pigs have higher intellectual capacity than dogs do, and they behave just like dogs if you have pigs around and they're used to humans. So the bias towards my own species does not roll over into, okay, I'll defend defenseless humans, but defenseless animals, fuck them. They're delicious. Just let them, be tortured and treated however they want. I'll look the other way so I don't have to think about it and move on with my day. There's nothing inconsistent about holding that position and being a conservative. Especially because a lot of that is driven by the sort of corporatist framework of, I'm not even going to go on a rant about that. You feel free to look it up for yourself, but the impact that big meat has had in their advertising, their marketing, and convincing you that this is a good thing, this is a manly thing, this is an American thing, that drives a lot of the sentiment that we have now today. And these are the same corporations who are now making political moves to force you into silence if you don't want your child to be sexually exploited. I mean, corporations are fine. It's a free market. Evil corporations are not fine, and they are not commensurate or even passable within the conservative framework. That's not okay. Then at that point you've reached an oligarchy, not a free market system. And that's where we're at now, especially with social media. And the reason monopoly laws are in place for financial reasons, but monopoly laws are not in place for political reasons. And we find out now that there should be something preventing massive corporations from politically influencing people. But we could go through the whole list of conservative values and why I hold them. And just like being an atheist is not inconsistent with being conservative, because I'm interested in the psychological well-being of humans and other sentient creatures. There you go. I'm interested in conserving the psychological well-being of humans and other sentient creatures. Typically, the conservative is conserving our way of life or our traditions, but really it's about the well-being of the family structure and children. I feel the same way, just it doesn't stop at our own species. I wanted to see if I had written down, I think I hit everything that I wanted to hit, really, but I just I don't know if it's, I'm a secure person. So I'm not worried about being called a pussy or anything like that. I'm good to go. So if you are influenced in any way by external forces, which you absolutely are, into eating meat and not thinking about it, I would implore you to think about it and think about what that looks like in your life. Because at the end of the day, when next time you go out to eat, just think to yourself, just one time, just try it. Do I right now have the option to order something off this menu that does or does not contribute to the needless torture, commiseration, and slaughter of billions of animals every week? I promise you there's something there. I've gone to just about every restaurant I could think of, probably just about every restaurant that you could think of. There's always an option. That option is always available to you. You shouldn't just push it to the back of your mind so you don't have to think about it, because there are real moral implications to what you're supporting when you eat animals. So that's my whole spiel. There's nothing inconsistent about it. So maybe this sort of thought framework will help somebody think about it in a more legible way. It's not just smelly hippies with the anti-Iraq war signs calling my fellow brothers baby killers. It's not that. A lot of them are, and it's disgusting, but don't confuse the map for the place. You don't have to participate in what those people are doing. You can have your own moral principles, just the way that you have your own intellectual principles when it comes to the issue of God. Take every issue on its own. You can partition issues, feel one way about one thing and one way another way about another thing. You don't have to subscribe to the entire political garbage bag that gets dumped on you. There's nothing wrong with being a conservative vegan. There's nothing wrong with being a conservative atheist. Thanks.